At the end of the 8th century, the people of Western Europe knew little about the seafarers living beyond the cold northern seas. That would soon change. Scandinavia was a land of short summers, long winters, rocky soil, deep forests, and narrow stretches of farmland. Survival demanded discipline, cooperation, and adaptability. The people later called Vikings were not only warriors. Most were farmers, craftsmen, fishermen, merchants, and sailors. Society was organized around families, local chieftains, alliances, honor, and obligations. Reputation could determine both security and power. The longhouse was a center of family life. People ate, worked, slept, planned voyages, and preserved stories around the fire. The Norse worshipped many gods. Odin represented wisdom and war. Thor protected people with his hammer, and Freyr was linked to prosperity and fertility. For Scandinavians, the sea was not a barrier. It was a road connecting islands, rivers, trading posts, and distant coasts. The Viking longship combined speed, flexibility, and shallow draft. It could cross open water, enter rivers, and land directly on beaches. Skilled shipwrights shaped overlapping wooden planks, fitted flexible hulls, and built vessels that could survive rough northern seas. With a square sail and rows of oars, these ships could move with the wind or against it. Their design gave Viking crews extraordinary mobility. Long before the famous raids, Scandinavian merchants were already exchanging furs, walrus ivory, iron, amber, enslaved people, and crafted goods. Population pressure, political rivalry, trade opportunities, and the search for wealth encouraged some leaders to look toward the western seas. Viking sailors used practical knowledge of winds, waves, birds, stars, and coastal landmarks. Their navigation was based on experience rather than written charts. A voyage from Norway to Britain was dangerous, but possible. Crews endured cold, storms, exhaustion, and the constant risk of being lost. Off the coast of Northumbria stood Lindisfarne, a respected Christian monastery on a tidal island. It was wealthy, isolated, and poorly defended. Monks copied manuscripts, preserved religious objects, cared for pilgrims, and maintained one of the most important spiritual centers in northern England. To the monks, sacred vessels and decorated books represented devotion. To raiders arriving from the sea, they represented portable wealth. In the year 793, longships appeared near Lindisfarne. The exact size of the force is unknown, but the attack shocked the Christian world. The shallow draft ships reached the shore quickly. Armed men moved from the beach toward the monastery before help could arrive. The monastery had no army and no strong walls. The attack was fast, confusing, and devastating. Valuable objects were seized, buildings were damaged, and members of the community were killed, captured, or driven away. European rulers were familiar with war on land. These attackers arrived from the sea, struck vulnerable targets, and disappeared before local forces could respond. News of the attack spread through monasteries and royal courts. Writers described it as a terrifying punishment and a sign of chaos. Later English records remembered strange signs, violent storms, and fiery dragons in the sky before the attack. Such descriptions reflected fear rather than reliable observation. Monasteries were attractive targets because they held concentrated wealth, had limited defenses, and were often located near rivers or coasts. Lindisfarne was not the first contact between Scandinavians and Britain, but it became the symbolic beginning of the Viking Age. After 793, attacks continued against monasteries, ports, and coastal communities in Britain and Ireland. What began as seasonal raiding gradually developed into larger military expeditions. Fleets grew, leaders became more ambitious, and targets moved inland. Viking ships could travel deep into Europe, through rivers such as the Seine, Rhine, and Loire, bringing raiders close to wealthy towns. Other Scandinavians sailed east through the Baltic and river systems of Eastern Europe, trading and fighting on routes toward Byzantium and the Islamic world. Vikings did not only destroy, they also settled, farmed, traded, married, and created new communities in Britain, Ireland, Iceland, and beyond. The word Viking probably referred to an activity or expedition rather than an entire people. Not every Scandinavian was a Viking, and not every Viking was a raider. The famous horned helmet is a modern invention. Historical Viking warriors used practical helmets, simple protection, shields, spears, axes, and swords. In battle, warriors could form a shield wall, standing close together to create a strong defensive line. Successful leaders rewarded followers with silver, weapons, land, and status. A chieftain who failed to provide opportunity could quickly lose support. European kingdoms eventually adapted. Coastal defenses improved. Rulers organized fleets, and fortified towns became harder to attack. The raid on Lindisfarne did more than destroy a monastery. It announced the arrival of a new maritime power in European history. The Vikings would become explorers, settlers, merchants, mercenaries, rulers, and founders of new states. Their voyages connected regions from North America to the Caspian Sea and changed the politics, languages, economies, and cultures of Europe. In 793, the monks of Lindisfarne saw ships approaching through the mist. They could not have known that those sails marked the beginning of an age that would transform the world.